So today I'm going to be talking about business plans, which is actually when I heard I was going to be doing this webinar, I was a little upset because it's a topic that I think probably a lot of people may not be that interested in hearing about, and I will review some of these business plans real quickly. But one of the things that I think is important for everyone to understand is, and this is an ongoing sort of feature in your career, is typically whether you're an associate or a partner, you will either follow someone else's plan or you'll follow your own plan. And too many people get stuck in the whole kind of process of following someone else's plan. And the whole idea of applying to work for someone is it's what I help people do, but it's the whole idea of going to work for someone else is basically going to work for someone with a plan. So people with plans are the ones that control the world, and they control their careers. They make the most money. They typically have the most career success. They have the most career satisfaction. They feel the most secure. And there's just a lot of very strong reasons for you to have a plan for your career and also for your life. And I spend personally a lot of time planning. And the more I plan, I find the more I spend time planning as opposed to working many times, the better that I do. And pretty much every manager in our company has plans. I have plans, and I have planning books walk all around me. Here's one. And every week I spend planning. So there's lots of ways to plan your career and plan your business. But the most important thing is to have a plan. And I've talked a lot before about the importance of planning and different studies that have been done. But for the most part, anytime I've met someone that's been very successful, they've always had a plan. I met one guy recently that sold a liquor company he started. He sold it in, I don't know, 10 years, or no, not 10 years, I'm sorry, in 5 years after starting it, for the amount of money that he had said he would sell this liquor company for when he actually started the liquor company. So it's when you have a plan for what you're doing, it makes a huge difference. And most people with plans do well, and those without don't. And this is what's important for your career. So you need to come up with a plan and know what you want to do. You don't necessarily need to know right when you start that you want to be a partner in a law firm or go in house, but you need to have a plan. And once you have a plan, everything is going to start falling into place for your career. You can have a plan for yourself in terms of what you're going to do. You should also have a plan personally for the things you want to do. And that can make a big difference. I also have a personal blog and have counseled people for a long time personally, in addition to in the business role. And I don't certainly have time to do that sort of stuff really much anymore. But when you're coaching people, all the successful people that I've coached that have been the most successful attorneys, making well into the seven figures and having big books of business and so forth. Those people all had plans. They didn't just suddenly become a partner and then everything fell into place. They had plans for the type of clients. They had plans for the type of work they wanted to do and how they wanted to specialize and all sorts of things. And law firms also have plans. The best law firms have plans. The best businesses have plans. And so if you're just winging it in your career and you're doing and following other people's plans. Some people like that because they feel protected doing that. As a matter of fact, that's what most of the world does. Most of the world does not really have a plan, and that's fine. You don't necessarily need to have a plan. And if you land in the right law firm, you may do very well following their plan, but the odds are that you won't. The odds are that without a plan, things are just going to happen to you. You're going to have a lot of insecurity. You're not going to know where you're going. And you're going to be in much worse shape than you would without a plan. One thing I wanted to say too is I love everybody should have some portion of their time dedicated to self-improvement things like listening to what I'm talking about right now, and also reading self-improvement related things. And that one of the biggest objects of self-improvement, and it's actually found through all religions that have caught on. Most religions, in some respect, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or regardless of the religion, they all have something in them that says what you concentrate on will be what you become. What you practice, you will get better at and achieve. The reality that you envision for yourself is what will happen. And it's true. I can tell you that it's absolutely true. But that's the only way to get what you want, is to constantly remind yourself of that's what you want. There's a famous book that I recommend you read. It's on my blog for free it's on harrisonbarnes.com, and it's called Think and Grow Rich. And they have a very simple formula. And it's basically you write down what you want and you look at it every night or twice a day or something, and then that becomes true. And that's actually true. The more you concentrate on things, the more those things are likely to come true. So that's kind of my preamble for you. And I will talk about all these business plans and get started because I know that's something you probably want to hear about. But it's important to realize that without a plan, things happen to you. And the other thing that's funny too, with planning is most people, when you set your kind of wildest expectations of your plan and what you want, you may say, I want to have 10 of the largest companies in the country as my clients within 10 years or 5 years or whatever. And most people don't even, these ideas that they give for themselves are so large and so unbelievable that they think it will never possibly happen. And then they don't even have the self-confidence. So the other thing that goes along with having a really good plan is working on your self-confidence. And there's all sorts of books about self-confidence, and you can do self-meditation, and there's great stuff on YouTube for meditation, but you need the self-confidence. So most firms, by the way, do not have business plans. They just hope that people will contact them. And a lot of practice groups don't have business plans. Individual attorneys don't have business plans. And if a firm does have a business plan, you might not even be aware of it and not included. You're just a tool and part of it. And so you may be operating under someone else's business plan. You may have spent time operating under someone's business plan. And the thing about law firms too, by the way, is because you're selling labor and it's just your work and it's marked up and there's not like a lot of cost associated with that other than office space and so forth. Law firms can many times get away without having business plans and knowing where they're going, but most businesses can't. You do need to have a business plan. And even as a law student, you should have a plan about what you want to do and remind yourself of it. And then as an attorney, you should have a business plan and remind yourself of what you want to do. Because if you don't do this, then you're just going to be searching for someone with a plan, and their plan may not be a good one. When you start planning your business and what you want, it's not really about writing a huge, long object of things about what you want. You don't need to really spend a lot of time deciding what you want to do over the next, every day and every year for the next 10 years. It's really any sort of business plan can be very simple and make it what you want. One thing I will say is that you don't necessarily need to call it a business plan. You can call it a career plan. But a lot of law firms, when they're interviewing people, they may interview attorneys that have, once you start having 5, 6, 7, 8 years of experience, they want to get a sense that you have some ideas about where you're going with your career and that what you want to do in the future. And so they will want, in many cases, a business plan, and they'll ask you for it. And most business plans that people do aren't very good. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to talk about this today. A law firm having a business plan is really giving confidence that you're going to be able to do something and you've set your mind to it. And just having a plan is not enough. You need to believe in it, and you need to believe that you're going to achieve it. You need to take inventory where you are. You need to determine where you want to go. And then you have to have a roadmap for getting there. I've had a lot of mentors that have been very good throughout the years. And you certainly, I'm happy to mentor you with this sort of information, or you can find other people. But there's people like Tony Robbins, for example, that one of my mentors, and he had his ideas like the ultimate success formula. So you need to know where you want to go. Then you need to course correct and fix yourself and just keep pointing yourself in a direction. And I believe it's him that gives this analogy, is when an airplane takes off, and it just doesn't take off. It takes off and it starts flying in a general direction. But when it's flying, it's making thousands of adjustments before it gets to where it's going. If you don't have your autopilot on, and you're flying from Los Angeles to Oakland or something, a pilot's going to make hundreds and hundreds of corrections to get where they want to go because everything keeps getting steered off course. So the idea of a business plan is you look at that each week and you look at it and it tells you where you want to go. And then you revisit it periodically to make sure you're going and making sure you're on the right course. And what you should do really is you need to write down what is it that you want. And a lot of times you'll get the idea of what you want based on what you're around you, the people around you, the people that are successful versus not successful around you, what makes you happy, where you could add things and so forth. You need to, spend some time thinking about that. But once you have that, and you're able to think about who you are and what you want and what's going to matter to you, then you can start charting your career course. And you can do things that when you realize you're going to get off track and constantly push yourself back on track. And that's very powerful, by the way, if you're able to know when you're making a mistake. So part of my business plan is to be beyond the best in the world at what I do, and which is what I'm talking to you right now, and then other things to do with candidates and finding firms and finding candidates. And so every day, in terms of my goal, I'm making hundreds of course corrections. And I start every morning very early and talk and have write down goals and look at what my overall goals are. And all these things help you. It's helping you to be better and making sure you're not getting off track, because everyone has a certain you have multiple opportunities to get off track. You have jobs that you'll get offered that'll get you off track. You have taking sides with people that are going to hurt you, or getting involved in things that are going to get you off track. And so you need to make sure you're always on track. And it can take a long time to do that. And I'm telling you, just everybody that is very successful. And when I say very successful, I mean that is very very fulfilled from a career standpoint, meaning doing very well at the practice of law, and then also doing very well personally and professionally, personally as well. They all have business plans. And some people don't actually have a written business plan, but their goal is to be like the best, this type of lawyer, and they think about it. It's all they do. And they've written it down somewhere. And just having this focuses you on what you need to do and to make sure you're not going to get off track. And I'm going to give a lot of examples of all this today, but it just helps you focus, and you need to know where you're going, because a lot of people have no idea where they're going. So they may do a certain type of work, and then if another type of work comes along, they'll try that, and then they'll do this and that, and they'll take this job and that job. And most people, there's a word for it, and it's called, I don't know what it's called, meandering, or just not committing, not doing anything. And so most people are not focused on anything. And if you think about the people that are focused, it's very, very minimal. There's very few people that are focused, and you're going to constantly be presented with all sorts of opportunities. You're probably presented with them on a daily basis. I talk to people I don't know, not too long ago, I was working with a patent litigator, and he had a job offer that was paying, I don't know, $300 and some thousand a year. And he was, I don't know how many years out of law school, but not many. And then all of a sudden his friend said, "Hey, I got this idea to start this, and this person's going to give us money to start it." So he decided, instead of taking one of the several offers that I got him, he decided that he was going to go do that. And then of course he's taking care of his wife and family. And within a couple months, the company was bankrupt, and then he had to look for a job again, or out of business. I don't know if it went bankrupt, but this is just how it is. And if you don't have a plan, like this guy could have said, "I'm going to be a partner of this type of firm." If you want to be a partner in a firm, you're going to choose firms based on that. If you want to be happy and have time with your family, you're going to choose firms and locations based on that. So you need to choose things and come up with a plan that's going to work for you. And if you want to be in-house and have a stable job, you're going to go to an in-house job that's going to be stable. But most people, because they don't have plans, they're acted upon. And they're acted upon meaning they choose firms where they'd never make partner. They choose in-house jobs where they never could stay. I mean, just all these sorts of things. And this is a major cause of failure. The major cause of failure is allowing other people to act on you. And I'm telling you, like you're just like a plane's flying somewhere, are faced with decisions day in and day out. Every day you're faced with decisions that are relevant to your career. And if you have a plan, it's going to make a huge difference. You have to trust me that there's really nothing more important. And it takes time to do. And many times when you do a business plan, you may think, "Hey, it's not working. But it will work. It always works. It works for the glory and success of mankind," which is what they say in the Napoleon Hill book. It definitely works. So here's some steps that you can take to build your own personal business. And I'll tell you also at some point today a little bit about how I plan, but it's not really that important to understand where I'm at, but I will go over that with you guys a little bit. So the first step you need to do anytime you do any sort of business plan is you need to survey your situation. And you need to have some sort of way where you can ask yourself a bunch of questions. And one of the things, I was talking to a guy that had just graduated he'd gone to business school, I don't know, in his late 30s or something. And he'd just gotten an MBA or something from Berkeley, I think. And I was asking him what his favorite part of getting an MBA was. And he said, well, the part he liked about was the interpersonal, like learning about himself. And that's something I never thought of with MBAs, because a lot of it is just finance and marketing classes and spreadsheets, but I never thought about that. And so I liked it when he told me about that. I thought that seemed very useful. But you need to ask yourself what your strengths and weaknesses are. And that's called a SWOT analysis. So certain people are good at certain things. Any type of business plan that you do should not make use of your weaknesses. If my strengths I have certain strengths and I have certain weaknesses, and you probably do too. If you're very good interpersonally, then you shouldn't consider. I know one guy that thought it would be cool to be an appellate attorney that had some of the best interpersonal skills I've ever seen. So he was working at Quinn Emanuel and made partner, and everybody liked him. And he had clients and all sorts of things. And then he decided, well, this is just a lot of work going into court all the time and all this fighting about discovery and stuff. I think I'd prefer to be an appellate attorney. And he got a job working for one of the biggest law firms in the country as a partner doing appellate work. Well, that primarily is sitting in a room, writing and researching, and that was a good fit. And it wasn't a good move for him. And so he didn't take advantage of his strengths. So you need to understand what your strengths are. And there's all sorts of inventories that you can do. There's things like there's disc profiles, which I've been doing for a long time. And you can do them online, and we're putting one live on our site shortly. There's all sorts of online personality tests and things. There's something called like 11 personalities or 11. There's a bunch of tests online, but you need to understand what you're comfortable with, because anything that you like, you'll do naturally. And the things that you like and you do naturally will expand. I was telling someone yesterday about the difference, one of the things they say is the difference between a really good computer programmer, which is someone that, programmer, and the difference of an average programmer is like a really good programmer is not just like 2 times better than an average programmer. There's something like 100 times or 200 times better, because they can see things and understand things so much more effectively that it makes a huge difference. And they can do something like, one time I was working with a programmer and he had a PhD, I think, in astrophysics from USC, and was just an incredibly smart guy. And we were working on this huge program that took months we had 3 or 4 people working on it. He was able to come in and think about what we were doing and look at it. And in 15 minutes, 4 or 5 lines of code that did all this work that this team of programmers had been working on for months, and did the same that they were doing and did it more efficiently and faster. And this is what happens when really smart people do things. I had another experience that I was telling this person about yesterday. When I was in college, like for some reason I placed an advanced, like not just advanced, but like super advanced calculus, like the highest level that they had. And I showed up in this class at the University of Chicago, and it was very easy, like the first week or so. But then it got to the point where I would sit in the library for several hours, like trying to understand just one problem. I would be like miffed, and then still wouldn't understand. I would go back at night and then finally be like, okay, I get this. And then some of the people in that class were so smart. They would literally look at this thing and they would think about it for 30 seconds and maybe take some notes. Boom, they'd be on to the next thing. So this is what really smart people do that have really good strengths in something. And of course, I didn't stay in that class, thank God. But it taught me something, that people have strengths, and some people are really good at math. And these people were, I think, 20 people that maybe out of the entire 1,000-person class that placed into this stupid calculus thing. It was unbelievable how difficult it was. And it wasn't anything that I was even remotely qualified for. But the point is that some people are very smart at certain things and have natural gifts. Everybody, by the way, has natural gifts, and you do too. And I don't know what they are. They could be about people, they could be about information, they could be interests, but you need to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then you need to try to work on those strengths, because your strengths will expand and you'll be doing that stuff, and your weaknesses will shrink. You're never going to fix your weaknesses or be just as good as other people in your weaknesses. If you're trying to be if I was trying to be a mathematician, that would have been a really freaking stupid, because I just don't have it. And then you have to see what interests you. The same thing with your practice areas, like what kind of practice areas interest you the most. And so you need to write that down and think about it. I don't know what it is that interests you the most, but something does. And professional activities must interest you. What do you gravitate towards naturally when no one's telling you what to do? You have to ask yourself, what is it that you do? What do you want to do in your free time? What kind of books do you like to read? There's nothing wrong if you like reading comics, because you may be like there's a market for people to do things like that, but everything you do should make use of your skill set. I know a person that was in the fashion industry and became an attorney, and then was very interested in representing other people that were in fashion and in their immigration work. So it depends on what interests you, and you have to work on that, and you have to gravitate towards what's interests you. And if you do try to do things that don't interest you, then, then you're never going to succeed and you're never going to be happy. So you have to think about your strengths. You have to think about what interests you, and you have to think about your network and people that can help you. And if you don't even have a network, and are you interested in building a network? One example may be if I wanted to be a sports attorney. I personally like sports, so certain sports I like, but I'm not gung ho. I don't want to get out there and I wouldn't meet athletes and things. It's not my thing. So that would be a really freaking bad move for me to do something like that. I would be better off doing something. And then you have to ask yourself with your business plan, whatever it is you're interested in, what are your firm's goals and objectives? In most cases, your firm is going to want you to be, if you're a young attorney or an associate or something, your firm's going to want you to be a soldier. And even if you're a partner in a law firm without business, your firm's going to want you to be a soldier. And that means they're going to act upon you. What happens to soldiers? Soldiers are the first to go. They get killed. They don't survive. The ones that survive are the ones that have business in law firms and have plans, which are the generals and those sorts of people, because they're doing the planning. So you need to be in a situation where you're the one doing the planning, and you need to make sure that your goals, that whatever it is your goals are, in line with the objectives of your firm. If working in a law firm is not your thing, then get out and set another business plan. It could be your own law firm. It could be all sorts of things. You just have to understand what your goals are. One story that I've told that I like to tell quite often is just about different types of celebrities. So what if Kanye West, for example, had decided instead of being a musician, he wanted to be a dentist? Would that be a good use of his skills? Maybe he saw a dentist in his community and thought the dentist was really cool, and some girl said you should be a dentist when you grow up. And so what if Kanye West decided to be a dentist? Or what if a famous football player decided instead that he wanted to be a painter and had no painting skills? You have to understand what your skills are, and you shouldn't be acted upon by other people, and you should be doing things that are in line with your skills. The other thing is competition. Any type of goal, you have to be competing with, you want to be at the top of your game. So you want to be competing. You don't want to be competing with people that are going to blow you out of the water. So I want to go back to this example of me taking super duper honors calculus at the University of Chicago with, for some reason, one of 20 students or whatever, and out of 1,000 or 800 person class that placed into this. That would have been insanity. Like, who would do something like that? There's no way I would ever be able to compete. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, interested in it enough. I don't have that's absolute insanity. So if you're competing and you're trying to compete and you're right now at a major law firm, like, that's so competitive, there's no way that the objective and you're not interested enough in the practice of law in your practice area that you're ever going to become something, then what are you doing? Is that a smart use of your time? I don't know. It may be. You certainly can rise to the challenge, but if you're trying to do something doesn't fit your nature and your interest, that's not good. People become litigators all the time that are afraid of conflict. Good idea? No. Litigators need to be able to do conflict. People become corporate attorneys all the time who love to write and argue. Is that a good use of someone becoming a corporate attorney? So you need to understand where you're at. You need to understand what the competition is. And you need to understand all these things, because if you don't understand them and you're not doing a good job with them, you're going to literally get blown out of the water. So your business plan should take into account, what are you going to be best at? A lot of people do very well in practice areas. I know a lot of family law attorneys that are very good at conflict and stuff. And it's not a lot of complexity for a lot of family law attorneys with writing and so forth. So they can do well, or immigration attorneys or workers' comp attorneys or different types of attorneys that would probably not be very good antitrust attorneys. They would get blown out of the water. They wouldn't be able to keep up with the complexity of that type of work, but they're very good at what they do. You need to make sure your personality is right. You need to understand that if you're competing to be someone, that you're doing so in the right market. One of the things I don't about sometimes of large markets, New York City is an example, Los Angeles is an example, different markets, sometimes large markets, is that you may never your potential in those markets, because you're going to be up against people that just have a different level of skill. Going to Harvard Law School in a major law firm in Los Angeles is, no one cares. It's not, they care if you went to Yale, I'll give them that, but Stanford and Harvard, not so much. People are just whatever. Is that the kind of competition you want to be up against? I don't know. It may be, but you have to be careful. So you have to be careful the size firm you're competing in. You have to be careful what your goals are, the size market. And Las Vegas is a good market if you want to be successful. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So you just need to understand all of this stuff. And you're not going to succeed many times in a firm packed with attorneys that all have the same goals that are it's just going to be difficult. You're going to have a hard time in different geographic regions. So if you go into a geographic region that is very competitive, you may get a very cold reception. Why would you? And it's going to be harder for you to get ahead. And that may be a good idea for you. You definitely need to aim high, but you need to be careful. I talk to partners around the country all the time, every day, that are desperate for people. I was talking to someone yesterday in North Carolina. I actually talked to a couple of people there that are desperate for people. There's certain areas of the country that are more busier than others and where you can do well, where your goals are more likely to come true. And so you need to think about that. And you need to make sure that you're capitalizing on different trends. If you put your email in the chat, we'll make sure that we email you this after. I'm not sure that I know I said that we would do that last week, but I will email you that if you put it in the chat, because you should take a look at these different things, and you need to understand what to avoid and how to capitalize on what your strengths are. And let me be very clear. Everybody has strengths. Every single person out there has strengths. It does not matter what law school you went to. It doesn't matter what's happened up until today. It doesn't matter. And in fact, if bad things have happened to you in the past, that's probably a good thing because you know what to avoid and the dangers of not planning. It doesn't matter and none of this stuff matters. All that matters is what are you going to do with what your experience is and what's happening now in the future. And these are the things that you need to work on and you need to capitalize on. But I'm telling you, I encounter extremely successful attorneys all the time, even around LA. And I'm like, this person went where to law school? And these are like unaccredited law schools where when people were graduating, they were taking exams by mail. There's very successful attorneys out there. It doesn't matter, but these people had goals. They knew they wanted to be this type of attorney. They knew they wanted to do this or that. And so that's what you need to think about. You need to think about having goals and you think about making the most of your skills. And I want to just encourage everybody to take inventory of your strengths, your weaknesses. What are you interested in? What sort of things do you gravitate towards naturally? What is it that appeals to you? What are you interested in? Are you interested in, some people are interested in, I saw a great business plan not too long ago and it was an African-American attorney that wanted to bring in all these African-American businesses into a major law firm. And it was a great business plan. And that was what really interested in them because they felt that they were serving underserved communities and it was something the person was very passionate about. I've seen business plans from people that want to bring in technology companies that are working on solar power. I've seen whatever it is you're interested in, you need to think about it very closely. And I was also listening to another lecture. There's an interesting book out that I was reading. I think it's been out for a long time, but somebody brought it up and I was on some kind of lecture and it was called Essentialism. And whenever I'm driving, I like to listen to books on tape because it gives me ideas. And this essentialism, basically, there was a statement in it. This father, his daughter wanted to go to Harvard or something. And so he said, okay, you need to, in order to get into Harvard, by the way, as a college student or a lot of very competitive schools, you need to not just be smart, but you need to have some sort of edge. And so a couple years before me, there was a guy from my high school that went to Harvard that was an expert in bugs. He just really liked bugs and wrote articles about bugs. There was a guy that I knew in college that got into my school by being an expert in how bobcats digest bones in their stomachs. Being experts and interested in something makes a difference. So this guy said to his daughter, if you're going to go to this Harvard school, you're going to have to be really good at something. So she kept trying all these extracurricular activities. And each one she did, some of them she was good at, some of them she wasn't. And he said, if you're not going to be exceptional at it, so eventually they found something that she was just outstanding at. And I don't remember what it was, but it was a natural skill. And then they went all in. So she tried all these different until she became really good at something and she got into the school. So you need to be good at something and whatever you're capitalizing on, you need to commit to it. You may be very interested in being an expert in e-discovery as it relates to pharmaceutical companies. I don't know, or whatever it is, but anything that you're really interested in, you need to be the absolute best at. And then you need to have, and then if you are that interested in it, then that's going to attract clients. Because I was looking yesterday for an attorney that had appellate skills in a certain practice area. And when I looked into it, I only found 4 people in all of California that had that. And so that was very easy. And very few people would hold themselves out as being experts in something like that. And that's what you need. So the next thing you need to do is you need to determine where you want to go. If you know who you are, which I hope you do, I hope you can look at everything I said and have an understanding of the sort of person you are. And who you are, by the way, is important. Certain people, like you have to take your personal experience into account. People have things happen to them or they have experiences. Certain people may have had very tough childhoods or very good childhoods. Or I know two people, I was just thinking about one experience. I know one girl that grew up in Connecticut and very wealthy and ended up becoming a trust and estates attorney at a huge firm in New York City. And so that was a world that she knew. And she's very kind of cultured and spoke well. And then I knew another woman that was, I don't know, had some very serious family problems growing up and with problems with her parents. She became a family law attorney. So you have to, your experience, and very good, both of those people, you have to use your experience and so forth. And you need to think about creating a mission statement for yourself. And there's a lot of stuff out there about mission statements, but mission statements work. And there's people that will help you create your own mission statements. There's also books about mission statements. There's a really good book on tape by I think it's Earl Nightingale about missions and goals. But you need to have mission and you need to have a mission statement. And the mission statement is basically something that you can write down and look at it. And it says, this is who I am and this is where I'm going. And this is what I stand for. And so a mission statement may be, why are you practicing law? What are you trying to achieve? And you have to ask yourself that. What are you doing right now? Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it because you are enjoying what you do and you like helping companies or people in whatever your practice area is? Is it because you couldn't think of anything else to do? Where do you want this to lead? Do you want it to lead to a house and a retirement, or do you want it to lead to you becoming, no one has to be famous. No one has to be anything other than what you are. But you should know at least what it is. Some people want a very calm life. They want a job that they can go to, and they want to have a family, and that's what makes them happy. Other people want to be very successful and on top of the world. And there was someone I was actually talking to the other day that was saying something like, you basically have 4 burners. You have one of your burners is the other is your friends and family, or your friends, or your outside friends. The other one is your family, and the other one is your health. And most people can only do 2 at a time. So you have to choose. What are you going to do? Are you going to put everything on your career, which is going to harm your family, or you're going to put everything? And so I'm not suggesting that you go out there and take over the world as an attorney. I will tell you that thing about the ovens or the different burners, almost every super successful attorney I know, and there's a lot of exceptions, but a lot of them, they neglect their health and they die early. I've seen that happen a lot. Others neglect their family and they all these divorces and very unhappy things. So you need to understand where you're going to put your effort. That's one of the reasons, by the way, I like smaller markets, because people tend to they don't have to put all their marbles in one basket and be the most successful attorney. They can do other things. There's something for you to think about. You don't have to be act to the bond and have a very difficult career all the time. But it doesn't have to be unique. You just have to understand, where's all this going? What do you want? Because everybody deep down, myself included, wants to be happy. That's what we all want. We want to be happy and we want to be loved. And in order for you to be loved, do you have to be the best attorney possible? I don't know. To be happy, do you have to do that? Or is there something else that you need? And what is it you're getting out of the practice law? And what you should be, if you are practicing law, you should be interested. One of the things I will say, and I say this every week, but to be really unique and something that someone should be doing this, you should be actually interested in helping other people and clients, and you should take an interest in it. And that should make you feel good. But regardless of what you want, you have to have a mission, and you need a mission. And the mission should guide your decisions and everything you do. And if you don't have a mission, then you're going to be acted upon by someone else's mission. Because once you get a mission, you're going to bring in other people to help you and so forth, and they're going to help you with your mission. But most people with missions, by the way, if you're part of someone else's mission, I'm just going to tell you, if you're part of someone else's mission, most of the time it's not going to end well for you. And all I'm meaning by that is, if you buy into the company's mission, then that's the right thing. But if you're working for, someone and you're just trying to buy into their mission, that may not be the best use. You have to buy into their mission too. And then that becomes your mission, but you cannot be controlled just by someone's mission. And you can become anything you want, but you have to have a mission. And so many people and I've seen so many people succeed with this once they realize it. And I hope you do too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to build a map to get there. As you think about this process, you write down the things that are important to you and understand who you are and what your strengths are. Then you understand your weaknesses, and you typically do not, I want to be very clear, you don't want to build up and fix your weaknesses. You're not going to. You're never You can be operational in your weaknesses, but you're pretty much never going to completely fix your weaknesses, especially when you get older. If one of your weaknesses is exploding and getting mad at people, then you can probably fix that. Or one of your weaknesses is being careless and making typos, you can fix that. But I'm talking about bigger things like your people skills or your interest in things. And then you need to figure out, and then you have a mission statement that talks about where you want to go. And I don't know where you want to go. Most people come up with an idea about where they want based on their experience and something that happened to them. And in my case, doing what I'm doing now, I decided to jump all into this because I saw other people doing it and I realized that lawyers that I felt like I had something to offer that other people didn't, and I had a mission about it. But some people have missions. And I really want to caution you too. A lot of people will talk, a lot of people are focused on money and making money and sort of thing, and that becomes their mission. I don't think you want to make money part of your mission. I think anybody that's good at something, you'll always end up making a good living. But your happiness comes not from money. Your happiness comes from how you feel inside and pursuing something that you like. And people become extraordinarily well off doing things that they like, and whether it's financial or otherwise, but you just want to think about that. The best way, again, to map this out is start at the end of your way and then work your way back to your situation. So here's how it might work. The first thing is you have long-term goals. If you are, that I know that's very successful, has long-term goals. So I was talking to a woman the other day that was in her mid-60s, and she has a goal of retiring at 80 and selling her business or something. I don't know. She's got some kind of lighting business or something, selling it when she's, I don't know, 80 years old. And that's fine. That's a long-term goal. You can have long-term goals regardless of your stage of your career. Your goals may be, you just need to think about it. What are your long-term goals you need? And if your goal is to become a partner in a certain law firm, then you need to understand what is it going to require to do that. So one of the long-term goals might be developing a certain amount of business or becoming an expert in a practice area or getting the best reviews. But you have to have that, and you have to know that these are components that are going to make that happen. And then you may, in order to make those long-term goals happen, you always need to know what the rules are. Like, what do you need to do in order to achieve those goals? And what is it that needs to happen? And I'll tell you a quick story. For whatever reason, when I was in college, my girlfriend at the time, some guy that she was friends with, or her ex-boyfriend or something, I don't remember what it was, but I had gone to the same law school I went to. And so I decided, all right, I'll go to that law school. I didn't really know much about it, but she seemed to think it was great. And so I actually called up the dean of admissions of the school when I was like a sophomore, junior, and said, what do I need to do to get into this law school? And spent 15, 20 minutes talking to him. And then even called him when I was a junior, getting ready to choose classes for one semester. So the idea is, and which sounds just complete lunacy, and it is, but I was following this whole thing of Tony Robbins and Napoleon Hill and the idea that you need to know what the rules are. And then Tony Robbins talks about modeling people and understanding, but you need to understand the rules. So speaking with people that are responsible for things and asking them what you need to do and what are the rules of this are very important. And then, and so you need to, any goal you set, if your goal is to be a professional athlete, if your goal is to be, whatever your goal is, you need to understand what is it going to take for me to become that person? Because if you become that person, if you follow those rules and you become that person, then you can do it. And everything may sound incredibly insane at that point, makes sense to you when you get farther along. So an example, like a famous example about is a lot of times when you start establishing long-term goals for yourself, you think they're impossible. So for the longest period of time, and I'm sure you've heard this example, they said it was impossible to run a 4-minute mile. And doctors talked about how the human body wasn't capable of it and everything. And so everyone talked about how it was just an absolute impossible thing to do it. And then, of course, Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile. And I don't remember when it was exactly. And then all of a sudden, all these other people started being able to run a mile in less than 4 minutes within weeks of him being able to do the same thing. So the idea is a lot of times we put when you set goals, you believe that something's not possible. So you need to talk to other people that have achieved the same goals and understand what is important. So if you really want to be a partner in a firm and you go to senior partners and you ask them, what does it take and so forth, they're actually going to respect you for that and they'll probably help you. If your goal is to be a judge, you may want to talk to judges about what it's going to take. If your goal is to be a professor in a law school, you may want to talk to professors about what it's going to take. I had a funny experience when I was, my first summer, I worked in the Justice Department and in Washington, D.C. It was very hard to get a job there. And I went to talk to different attorneys there, and they were so excited to tell me about what you needed to do if you wanted to get a job, and they would go out of their way to help me in things. And so you need to do the same thing. You need to talk to people about that are doing what you want to do and ask them once you decide what you're interested in, because they will not only help you, but they'll tell you what the rules are. And you need to know the rules. And then if your goal is to be a top rainmaker, then you probably talk to other big rainmakers at your firm and other firms and see what they're doing. And you can't do everything, but if they say stuff like, I've done very well with podcasts, and if you like doing podcasts, then you can do podcasts, or I've done very well getting clients by going to Kiwanis Club of events. I don't know. You need to learn what other people are doing, and you need to learn these rules. And that's one of the big mistakes that people make. They make this in every area of their life. If you have a lot of anxiety right now and you're unhappy, if you're not doing as well as you think you could do in your career, it's probably because you're in your head. And if the worst person to advise you on your career is you, because you can certainly pick up information, but you need to get other people, you need to talk to other people and ask questions of other people. And you need to talk to people that have already succeeded, and older people in there, to give you advice. I had the strangest experience. This is a pretty funny thing. A while ago, I went car racing. It's a stupid thing, but I went car racing with this girl just for fun, like driving to the speedway. And then when you go to the speedways, you have to drive late at night because the track time's cheaper. And so we were done at like 11:30 and getting ready to go back to go back to the hotel and everything. And she said, "Hold on, I have to make a call." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And this woman's an attorney, by the way, a very successful one. And she said, "I need to call my mentor. I call in and I check in with him every night." And so this is someone, and the guy was in Hong Kong, and this is in LA. And so she calls this guy, and I'm sitting there, this abandoned parking lot in the middle of the night, not, after midnight. And she's talking to this guy, and this guy's a retired partner from a major American law firm that she calls every night to talk about her career and other stuff. And I couldn't believe it. But this is what a lot of very successful people do. They have mentors and other people that they rely upon to get the rules of how to succeed. And that's as extreme as I've ever seen, to be honest with you, but calling the same person very late every night like that. But that's her. But you need to talk to other people. And so that's the first thing. And you need to understand what the rules are. I had the same thing happen. I'm giving you kind of very simple examples, like a company that wants to go public will talk to someone and say, what is the revenues that we need to do? How much growth do we have to have on an ongoing basis to do that? And then they'll measure it. Because what you measure, if you can't measure something and you know where you're going, you won't do well. And then I remember even and I'm just giving legal examples because will be helpful to you. But I remember when I was in my first year of college, I had an advisor, and she said, I was like, "Oh, what kind of grades you need to go to law school?" And she's, "You need to have a 3.5. And the college I went to at the time, she said, "If you want to go to a top 10 law school." And at the time, the average grade point average was like a 2.7 in the college, and a 3.5 was like almost impossible. But learning that was very helpful. So you need to have a map and know what it's going to take. And if you think $300,000 is enough business to become part of your firm, it may be 5 million. You don't know. But you need to know the rules. You need to talk to other people. Then you need to set objectives, and you should have annual objectives. A lot of people, our company, will use quarterly goals. So we set, quarterly goals about things and have those. And so you should have quarterly goals if possible. That'll be very helpful for you. And then in order to have that, then you can have long-term goals, but you need to have quarterly goals. But the main ones are annual goals. So once you know where you want to go, what your long-term goal, then you set annual goals and you review them each year. There's all sorts of online programs you can do. But if your long-term goals includes developing a certain amount of new business, you might make it your objective to win 2 new clients this year, and that they represent a certain percentage, and to hold on to those clients. And this is what people do, by the way. I know I talk to very successful attorneys all day. Not all day, but because I'm doing stuff like this too. But the point is that the very, very successful people will do this, and they'll do it on an ongoing basis. And so you need to set goals. And then the thing about doing that is, if you say, I'm definitely going to have this amount of clients by this period of time, and you set a deadline, you'll make things happen. There's a story in the book Think and Grow Rich about, I believe it's in Think and Grow Rich, where it's about the founding of the Illinois Institute of Technology, and by Philip O'More, I believe. And what happened there is he had set a goal of coming up with $1 million by a certain date. And he was a preacher. And as he became closer to that date, he realized he didn't have it, but he kept reminding himself. And so then he decided he was going to talk on Sunday in church, give a thing about what I would do if I had $1 million. And so he just got up and he talked. And this was like a couple days before he was actually supposed to, but before he'd set the goal. And I don't know how long the goal was to, start and come up with $1 million for the school. And he gave a talk, and someone walked up to him after and said, "My name is this." Actually, I think Armour was the guy that gave him the $1 million. But anyway, he said, "This is, and I will give you, I believe you, you'll do what you say, and I'll give you $1 million." That set goals like that too. So you have to set goals for yourself. You need to set deadlines. I would say annual deadlines, and then remind yourself of that on an ongoing basis, and just really follow this framework. And again, your goal may be to have a certain number of face-to-face meetings. I know lots of young attorneys. There's a lot of very successful young attorneys out there. When I say young, they're in their mid 30s, early 30s, and that have developed large books of business. And a lot of these people, what they've done is they set goals like, I'm going to go out and try to meet or to make 10 phone calls a day to potential clients. I'm going to, have at least one dinner meeting with someone per week. I'm going to join this group and get involved. And so they do things like that. And then they start implementing their strategies. So they think about what kind of short-term strategies can you take to make these things happen. And that's very important. You may, for clients, you may need a referral network. You may need to become more visible in your practice area. There's just all sorts of things, but you come up with ideas and you set goals. And the thing is, if your goal is to do a certain thing, like, if your goal is to develop a certain amount of business, if your goal is to become a judge, if your goal is to go in-house by a certain date, then you're going to go out and you're going to talk to people that have done it and people that have succeeded. You're going to learn how they did it. You're going to take what they did and you're going to learn from it, and you're going to become very good at it and learn from the things that they've talked to you about. And then you're going to integrate that into a plan so you can go out and do these things yourself to become successful that way. And that's it. It's not really that hard. And you'll find opportunities. You're going to find opportunities to do things that you normally wouldn't. And that's the thing, is people that get things done and become successful, like, they find ways of making it happen. People don't just become leaders in organizations and by chance. They do by making it a goal and building kind of a persona for themselves to make that happen. I knew a woman, by the way, that wanted to become a judge, and she became a judge. And in order to do that, she became, president of the LA Bar Association. She did all these things that people that were just passive observers that were going to these events might not. I've known people that became Toastmasters, which is a public speaker thing, that wanted to be great in court and things and great public speakers, and they did that. And so you just, in terms of writing, like, I remember I wanted to write an article that would get published when I was in law school. So all I did is I went to a very famous guy in the faculty and I said, "What's a good article to write about this?" And he told me, and I did. And it's just as simple as that. You need to develop ideas and things to try to get to where you're going. You need to use other people, by the way, as part of what you're doing. And I know I said that before, but using other people is extremely important, because if you use other people have already thought about these things and they know things that you don't, and they can help you. And the most successful people, one of the things I noticed early on, it was funny. I used to be in this recruiting firm years ago. I used to think that the most important thing for hiring the best recruiters, which is actually wrong, but I'll just tell you about it real quickly, was hiring people with the best educational pedigrees possible. So I hired people that went to Yale Law School and, I don't know, Stanford Law School and Harvard and Chicago and all these great law schools to be recruiters. It should give you a sense it is completely irrelevant to being good at recruiting. Someone that's good at recruiting is actually interested in it. But anyway, these were very smart people that I hired. And one of the things I noticed is many times the smartest people that you hire are the smartest people you work with will be the best at asking questions and listening, because that's how they get information. And so you need to get out there and ask questions and listen. And so that's one of the things I always noticed. And after 5 years of hiring like these super smart people, I started to realize that the reason that they did so well many times was because they were asking and listening the best. And people that don't listen, that talk the most, that think they know everything, are the ones that are the least successful. The most successful people are often the best listeners and ask the most questions. Anyway, so you just need to do all these things, and it's going to help you. And you need to become very good of understanding where you want to go and how you want to get there. And everybody at every level have some sort of mentor with experience, and needing a mentor. Every self-help program, every program that's any good, any long-term program, religions, programs to help people with addictions, they all have mentor systems built into them. And they do because they work. It's everybody needs a mentor. It doesn't matter. Most people have parents that are the mentors, but you also need professional mentors and people you can ask questions to. And then if you want to become an expert in something, you need to seek opportunities so they're going to help develop those. I hesitate to talk about this, but I'm going to just talk about it real briefly because I think it's useful for you to understand. So I know a guy that is a very successful, or was a very successful family law attorney. But he was extremely unhappy. He was unhappy because he hated all the conflict. No one was ever happy. It was very difficult for him. And his background was he was a musician and he'd been a musician and went to an unaccredited California law school. And I was out to dinner with him one night and I guess he'd been so unhappy that he'd been drinking all day. And he just, we're standing there talking to him. He seemed perfectly fine to me. And then he just fell down like up to the ground, passed out. And so he was very unhappy practicing law. And that may be you. People use substances. It can be, when you don't like what you're doing, it can be very unpleasant. I spoke to him, but I'm certainly not the one. I don't take credit for the things that he did because he actually fixed it himself. He started joining music associations for attorneys, going to events, taking classes. I think he got an LLM or something. And now he's became a music attorney. And he set a new goal for that. And when I say he's successful, I mean, he had a practice that he individually was generating probably at least $1 million a year, just working on his own, representing people. So you can do well. But you have to do what you're interested in. And that's what he did. And then he went and talked to other music attorneys. And then he started playing in a band again and met other people. And so you can do well. And then other things these are just some examples. If you have business, meeting with your clients more and learning from them, asking people what's going on in their industries and learning that sort of information and then reading about them and just, these are all things that you need to do. You need to get out of your head. And that's the biggest mistake that you need to do. And then you need to understand the other thing is who are your competitors if you ask your clients that. And just take a real interest in different sorts of things related to that. And if your goal, by the way, is to have $1 million book of business or a $5 million book of business, once you have that as your goal, you're going to find ways to do that. So if that's what your goal, I'm not saying that has to be, your goal might be to be a judge. Your goal might be to go in house in a certain type of company. But if your goal is to develop a certain type of business, it's not just getting work from your existing clients. It's getting work from their client, similar types of clients, or getting more work from your existing clients by figuring out different needs and things that they have. And this is the way people think once they have goals. If you're not thinking that way, things are just happening to you. And I just really need you to get in the framework where you stop allowing things to happen to you and you make things happen instead. And anybody can do this. I'm thinking in the back of my mind right now, and I just want to make sure I bring this to your attention, is that most attorneys that I know, almost every one of them, is being acted upon by others. And that means that people are controlling them. They're controlling how confident they are. They're controlling how much they believe in themselves and so forth. And I'm talking about even the most successful attorneys out there are many times under that condition. And you need to understand that it's all about your confidence and whether or not you have the confidence in yourself to become the person you're capable of being. And you actually may have that confidence or you may not. And if you don't have that confidence, then how do you develop it? And you need to develop that self-confidence. And that's the thing is a lot of people don't have the self-confidence. I remember I don't know, I keep telling these school stories, but maybe I guess it's because it's just something that you and I share, because I know the people listening to this are attorneys. But when I was in 10th grade, I was in school at a school, and I was going to school in Bangkok, Thailand, at an international school, and I was getting ready to enroll in this thing called the International Baccalaureate Program, which is it's almost like that. It's in a very advanced, not the most advanced, but it's considered a very good degree to get if you go to school in Europe, and it's kind of more of a European degree. And so there was a girl that I was in a history class with, and she was smart. And only the smartest kids of the school took it. And I don't know if smartest is the right word. It was just, anybody could get into it. I think you just had to be very motivated. It was just a lot more work. And I said, are you taking these in IB things? And she said, no, why would I do that? That's only for the smartest kids. And she was Swedish and very smart in all my classes, but she just decided right then and there to limit herself. And almost everyone in the whole school limited themselves. They didn't believe that they were good enough to be this international baccalaureate thing. So even if they were from the UK or from France they just didn't, I don't get it, but people limit themselves and they do it consciously. So It's about your self-confidence. It's about what you believe in you can do. And this is part of the problem with goal setting is people don't have the self-confidence to become the person they're capable of being. And in this girl's case, for all I could see, she was probably smarter than I was. But she said, this is only for the smartest people. Why would I do that? And so that's how people think. So you have to have, when you have goals and you want it to be something, you have to write them down. And I'm not going to tell you everything about my plan, but I start out each day and I basically write down one or two of the things that I want to do that day. And then I write down certain things that I want that week. So I'll write down a few things that I want to accomplish that week. And then I'll write, maybe 10 things that week. And then I'll write down every day a couple of things I want to do. And that's really as simple as it gets. And you don't need to, and I'll talk a little bit about that more when we do the question and answer shortly. But that's it. And just concentrate on that. And then you should be fine. But everything needs to relate to that. And the other thing I wanted to just bring up real briefly is that when you're working on your plan, the thing that's so powerful about it is it will allow you to not get distracted by things that aren't related to what you're trying to do. And so the idea is that you get distracted by tasks that don't have really anything to do with what they want to do. And so that's one of the problems with that is that so for example, say your goal is to become a world famous food and drug attorney that services the largest, that services you could literally be as specific as a food and drug attorney that services companies that make personal care items related to deodorant and cologne. I don't know. You could literally have a goal like that. And so if somebody starts giving you like litigation, an auto accident case, and then incorporating a company and things, and you're like, this isn't leading me to where I want to go. And so you need to understand that. And so that hopefully will help you. So I'm going to take a quick break. I apologize. This has taken a little over an hour so far. And then when I come back, I will answer questions. I'm happy to, if anybody wants to just get a very simple way of planning things to give you that. And then I'll also, if you do put your email in the Q&A, I can send you some personal planning things that I use that may be helpful for you. If you put your email in there, I'll make sure everybody gets that and we'll copy that. And then I'll send you also a kind of a workbook that Earl Nightingale, it's a PDF that I think is very interesting that you may like. Any questions you have today, they don't have to be related to this presentation. I was, to be honest with you, very worried about this presentation because talking about business plans can be very difficult in terms of its interest to people. The article is online, so you can see sample business plans. But the big thing is just don't let people act upon it. You have to actually have a plan for what you want to do. So when I come back, I'll take questions. And questions will be, again, anything you want to ask about. And right now it is 11:13 here in California. So I'll be back in probably by 11:16, I think. And then we'll get started. Right. All right, great. So let's get to questions here. Hopefully it's not too big. Good. Go to Q&A. Wow, it's questions. That's great. So let's see. Okay. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Okay. First question. Let's see here. I am a junior legal counsel now, and I got 2 offers. Great. Which is a better offer? In a private equity firm as an M&A legal counsel or a big law firm at 4 companies? I think I actually answered this one last week, so I'm not going to answer it again. I don't know why someone would ask the same question, but the answer, I think I answered that one last week, so it should be online. Okay.
Since it's a different format, you just can't go full.
Oh, like that? That's fine. Okay, that's cool.
So
All right. Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, so here's a good question. Next one. I subbed at a firm in San Francisco and accepted a return offer, but I'm eager to move to LA. Is it fine for me to just email recruiting teams at other firms and ask if they have any openings? Is there a risk it comes back to bite me? Any other comments about how easy, difficult it is would be appreciated. Okay, so that's a good question. There's a couple of things I would say in response to that. The first is if you have to decide what are your reasons for moving to LA. So back to having a long-term goal and so forth, you need to understand what is the reason you want to be in LA. Now, I like LA much better than San Francisco just because it's not as gloomy, and San Francisco can be gloomy, but at the same time, you have to understand what the reason is. So you can get openings in a lot of different places. So openings, you can check for Law Crossing is a good source, but also if you're coming from a major firm, you may already know the law firm websites will have the openings. And then you can also email your resume to those law firms. So if you email your resume and you have the kind of resume they're interested in, then they'll call you and ask you questions and so forth. And so you can definitely do that. And I don't really see a problem with that. I don't know if you've had to accept your offer yet, but you can email your resume to law firms. And sometimes your school may allow you to do on-campus interviewing. I'm not sure after having an offer, but that's how I would approach that. And there is a risk that it's going to come back to bite you. Most law firms do not talk to other law firms about people applying there. It's just not. I've been doing this for 22 years or something. I don't know what the number is, but for a long time. And during that period of time, when I've represented candidates, I've hardly ever, I can only think of one example, and it was in 2000 when someone's confidentiality was disturbed. And that was because the person had actually committed a crime at their firm and been fired. And in a firm that received their resume knew about it. So most law firms are very good about not disturbing confidentiality. So I don't think that if you get another offer or you contact other firms, that they're going to contact your existing firm, but they may contact them to confirm that you worked there or something. But it, most law firms are so busy and the recruiting departments are so busy that you don't really have anything to worry about. The only concern that I would have about what you're seeking to do is it may violate some rules of now for your firm or your school or something. I don't know. So I just would be careful about that. And then I don't know if this is the same question. It says, should I confirm receipt of my signed summer associate offer letter? I submitted my signed letter over the weekend and via email and haven't heard an acknowledgement or response yet. Should I follow up with recruiting? Yeah, I think you can certainly follow up, but I don't know why. I don't know that you need to. I think if you emailed it, I think that again, the recruiting department is just very busy. I just would, yeah, I don't know that they're going to respond necessarily. I think that's fine. Imagine you're the law firm and they received a bunch of those. And so a lot of times people are just very busy. So I don't think I would worry about that. Oh, God. I was just notified by an employer to be prepared to reason through a legal issue in an interview I have upcoming. Do you have any idea what that can be? I'm a rising 2L, if that helps. I generally know nothing. I'm very nervous. So this question, I don't think there's any reason to be nervous about that question. I think really all they're asking is they're going to ask you a legal question and maybe ask you to answer it and tell you and with what they think or what your opinion is. It's no different than writing a law school exam, which is issue spotting and that sort of thing. So whatever the legal issue is, figuring out what the issue is and then the facts that go along with it and then reaching a conclusion. I don't think you really need to worry about that. It's no different than law school exams. And yeah, I don't know why they would do that, but I wouldn't worry about it. I think sometimes in law firms too, by the way, and interviews, like law firms try to use different forms of information or different things they want to make people interviewing feel like there's something unique about their interview, or maybe to make you feel like you had to work very hard to get the job or something. I don't know, but I wouldn't worry too much about that question at all. The big thing, though, is just to be very careful, not to be too over the top. But it's just a dumb thing because it takes a long time to learn how to practice law, probably 5 years after you get out of law school. So there's nothing they can, there's no reason for that, really. Okay. Okay. So this is actually a very good question. So on our CVs, besides highlighting what we achieved on the law firms we worked at, would it be a smart move to briefly list areas of law and other topics we worked at in those firms as well? For instance, listing them back to such objects as corporate law, shareholders' rights, and meeting procedures, board liability, transport law. Okay. So one of the things that's important, many times if you're trying to get a job in a smaller firm, like in a smaller smaller markets and firms typically may be more interested in generalists, meaning people that do a lot of different things. Then when you get into larger markets and firms, lots of experience is actually more of a liability. Like someone that's looking for, an example would be someone that's looking for an IP litigator does not need a trademark attorney with litigation experience. Someone that's looking for a family law attorney does not need someone with corporate experience. MMA, corporate experience, and IP litigation. So a lot of times people think that they've done stuff, that they've done a lot of things and that it's a benefit. But just imagine if you're trying out for a professional baseball team and telling them that in addition to professional baseball, you also play basketball and soccer. That's not really going to help them. The larger markets, really, you really want to try to focus your experience to what they're doing. Because the problem is that people are going to believe that if you say you've done transport law and corporate law, they're not going to like that because that's too many different things. And they're going to think this person just has kind of light experience and they're not a real expert. And law firms typically want people that are very experienced in something. So that's just something to think about. Okay. So and it's very important. And you need to be as focused as you possibly can. Okay. Read your articles regularly. Giving your views and commitments to work as a lawyer when it makes sense for a junior qualified lawyer. 6 months PQE to be a claims handler in a reinsurance company for the sake of getting relevant shipping and reinsurance law working experience for public years will be downgraded to paralegal. Okay, typically, so there's two questions. The first is if you want to work in a very niche field, which is shipping and reinsurance law, and then working as a claims handler for an insurance company. If those are related and those aren't the kind of experience that people, but I don't know if being a claims handler is going to be a legally related thing, but if it is related, then that would be good. I don't think working as a paralegal is a good idea. I think that you want to really, if you're an attorney, you want to be an attorney. And I don't know that if this is going to give you marine insurance law experience, then that's great. But if it's not, then that's a problem. And I don't really know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. So you need to think about that, how it's related. But you need to be, attorneys should not be paralegal. Let me just a couple of rules. Attorneys should not be paralegal. Because why is someone going to hire a paralegal who's got to hire an attorney as a paralegal? It just does not lead to advancement. Attorneys come to the U.S. all the time from foreign countries and get LLMs. It's not a good idea to work in a position beneath your skill set just for the benefit of working in the U.S. because it will be difficult to get out of that. So that goes for anybody, any type of job you're thinking about. It's also not a good idea to start your first job in-house, and especially with respect to an in-house job that is not practicing law. I'm not sure what's going on with you here, but I would recommend that try to get a job in a law firm in your home country practicing law first. The reason law firms are good is law firms are accountable, are businesses, and accountable for results to paying clients. And so they tend to provide a little bit different quality of a different type of work many times than you may find in a law firm necessarily, in an in-house or government type job. Judges are working as a judge for a judge that can be a good mentor. Okay, how do you suggest finding a mentor such as the one you mentioned earlier with experience building a new practice area? Would you suggest paying someone for this? No, you can pay people for it. You certainly can pay coaches and things like that. But my idea would be to develop an interest in something. And I don't know what that is. It could be, I don't know what the interest is going to be, but you develop an interest in something. Once you have that interest, seek out people that are good at it and tell them you admire them. So I'll just tell you how I got a mentor. I've had lots of mentors, but one of my business mentors is every mentor that I've ever had, I basically got telling them by being familiar with their work and then telling them how much I admired them and that sort of thing when I finally got to meet with them. And that I liked their work and all that sort of thing. So one of my first mentors, or one of my first business mentors, is a guy named Chet Holmes, and he's no longer alive. He wrote a business book that I worked on with him called The Ultimate Sales Machine, which I'm quoted in the cover, I think. Sales Machine. So what happened to him is I just met him he was giving a speech somewhere, and I met him and walked up to him and talked to him and told him how interesting I thought the work was he was doing and so forth. And then he was very flattered because most of the time, the people that contact you don't really understand your type of work and they don't really have an interest. And so I started talking to him and working with him, and it became a good friendship. So people can, in a mentor relationship. So people like having mentors and mentees, and because it gets them outside themselves and it makes them feel better about themselves and makes people feel good about themselves, that they can help others. So regardless of who the person is, you need to find someone that's an expert in whatever you're trying to do, and then learn from them, and then respect them for their role, and that will make them feel very good about themselves. So that's one of the best ways to do it. I'm not going to show this to discussion, but someone did ask a question about sharing model business plans. So the title of this presentation, there's also an article associated with it online in BCG, and there's business plans on that article. Okay, let's see here. This is actually an interesting question. It's about patent attorney. Have you heard of any patent attorneys seriously thinking about transitioning again back into the science and engineering careers? If they are inclined to move forward and backward while keeping their law practices active, what questions are people asking and speaking with? Yeah, I don't know. A lot of times people do go back into science and engineering, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's actually many times people find it much more interesting than practicing law because you're working on new areas, and I think you can do that. And one of the reasons a lot of times patent attorneys go to school late, and then there's all sorts of things with them about patent attorneys. But the big thing with most patent attorneys is that you can always do that. You can keep license active. I've seen patent attorneys transition back into law firms and so forth after having gone back to work. It's patent attorneys are just are many times looked at and evaluated a little bit differently than people in other practice settings. So it's just that's something to think about. Meaning, like if you're a litigator, it would probably be difficult to go back and work as an English teacher or something if you'd done that before. But if you have a science background, it's really not that hard. And that was here's a question. Okay, this is actually a really good question, and this will help a lot of people. So I appreciate whoever asked this question. How do you know if a law firm is hard to make partner at or if they are as select as they should be? I've recently transitioned to a more prestigious law firm at a senior level, and it feels like like here it is definitely hard to make partner, and many hardworking senior lawyers end up being promoted to counsel if they don't show sufficient business potential. Note that the law firm does not have non-equity partner positions that seem to make it hard to make partner at all. Okay. So that's a good question. So there's an article that I wrote on BCG called, there's articles about why law firms will never make you partner or something along those lines. Or there's definitely lots of articles I've written online about that, and I would look at those. But basically, law firms will only make you partner if they have to. So, you know, they have to partner if they have to. Now, you're talking about a law firm that uses probably lockstep, which that's what they're talking about when they say non-equity. So they may, actually, it doesn't mean they're using lockstep. I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense. But what you're talking about there is you're talking about a law firm that basically once you become a partner, you receive a percentage of the profits of the firm. That's what it means when they say they only have that. And so and then that'll make it a little bit harder to become a partner in the law firm because what a non-equity partner is basically just someone who's salaried, and then a equity partner that's salaried plus they get a percentage of the business. So most law firms will only make you a partner if they have to. Now, law firms have a lot of reasons for making you partner, but typically it's if you have a lot of business, societal, if they need leadership because people are leaving, if they do not have enough of something. And enough of something can be a lot of things. It can be things like, I know one law firm, very good law firm, it could be someone with your legal background, someone with your meaning, it could be skill, sometimes different racial, sex, et cetera, backgrounds, they may not have that and they need to do that. They can do it that way. They can also, it could be a branch office, not enough people. So there's all sorts of reasons that they can do that. But the problem with all this stuff is when you get into the to the largest law firms, typically what happens is the more established a law firm is, the harder it is to make. If you think about non-equity, let's talk about non-equity or equity. So if you think about the largest law firms, like things like your Cravats and things like that, those are very established law firms where it can be, I don't know if impossible is the right word, where you're going to have a very difficult time making partner in a very established law firm. If the law firm isn't established, then you're going to have a much easier time. So the law firms that have just opened a branch office, sometimes are good, easier places to make partner. Younger law firms, smaller, all that sort of thing. Smaller law firms, all sorts of things. But law firms will only make you partner if they have to. Why should somebody give you a percentage of their business if they can find someone like you on the open market? So that's the problem. So you need to everybody needs to offer far more value than you cost. So that's just basically the rule. And so law firms have no incentive to make you partner. If you're a huge, very powerful law firm, you've got people knocking down your door to work there. So why should they make you partner just because you're working there? You need to offer them something huge. And that basically means the opportunity to take a large percentage of your business and make much more than they would otherwise. It means that you have some special skill that they can't get in the open market. Like I knew someone that made partner at a big firm because they had a technical degree that the law firm needed for their client. Okay. Yeah. So if you're not interested in making partner, that's perfectly fine. This is a good question. What I would recommend is if you're not interested in chasing the partnership track, that's perfectly fine. That's actually a very mature decision. And you may be, and if you want to stay in a law firm and remain attractive to employers, That's fine too. The only thing you need to do is have a specialty. That would be regardless of the market you're in, I think a specialty is probably the most important thing. So what that means is being really good at something. You want to be very good at something. I don't know what that is, but it could be, if you're litigation, it could be the person that's, it could be marine related litigation. I don't know. I see people get positions all the time because they're in the right practice area. Anybody the more specialized you are, the more attractive you're going to be to employers. So someone that does 5 things, someone that does 1 thing very well is always going to be marketable. So I have right now for example, if you're in New York City, I have tons of people that are senior real estate attorneys that have experience with building leasing, and they have no business and they've been practicing for 30 years, but they're getting lots of interviews. And then I have senior attorneys that are experienced in foreclosure litigation. They're getting interviews because that's all they do. But then if you have experience in 5 different types of litigation, you're going to have a harder time getting a job. So people want specialists. And so that's really the most important thing. And if you're a specialist in anything and a very good specialist, you're always going to have value that you can offer to your employers, and you don't have to be a partner. You can practice law without having to be someone that has all these clients. Being someone that brings in clients and manages clients and stuff is a different job than the position of just being a partner, an attorney. Okay. All right. Let's see. Good questions. I love all these questions. Thank you for asking them. Okay. Let's see here. Current federal magistrate clerk. I've been submitting apps for district clerkships for the next term without any luck. Would it be worth it to also apply to magistrate clerkships in my home state? I figured that my current role would be of interest, but I thought the same thing when I submitted district judge apps. Would it be a career killer to have negative impacts on my career? I have no plans after my current career plan for that. Okay, so the problem that magistrate clerks are good jobs. I think there's good things about them and there's bad things about them. The only problem with it is they tend to do like a lot of the work there's nothing wrong with the federal magistrate clerk. It's actually a good job. But what I would recommend is, I think you're going to be better off if you try to go and get a district court clerkship. The reason the district court clerkship is good is because the district court will give you more exposure to different types of motions and writing and things than you're maybe as a magistrate clerk. And what I recommend with clerkships is, if you really do want a clerkship, then a federal district court clerkship, then you should be applying to a lot of different markets. So instead of just applying to larger size markets, you can also apply to smaller ones and judges there. When I clerked, I thought I was applying to a clerkship in Detroit, which is where I was from originally, but I ended up working in a courthouse that was an hour outside of Detroit. It's just, so applying to more clerkships can make it much easier. There's nothing wrong with the federal magistrate court clerkship, but it's that there's nothing wrong. It's actually a very good clerkship. The problem is just that it typically is a stepping stone to doing a district court, and then from there. So that's what I would recommend, or just looking for jobs after that. But certainly working as a magistrate clerk is a good position. And it depends also on the market that you're in. Obviously, the bigger the market as a magistrate clerk, the more prestigious it is many times. But you said, would it be worth it to apply to different magistrate court clerkships? I think just doing one clerkship is probably enough. I even say that for federal district court clerks and appellate clerkships. Sometimes people do 2 appellate clerkships because they want to work with an appellate judge. It's a feeder to a Supreme Court justice or something. But I think the longer, you can do 2 different things. One of them, you could be a career clerk, which actually is a very good job. And I'm surprised more people don't do it. You can, especially in smaller markets, make very good living. You could be a career clerk as a magistrate clerk, or you could also be, until your judge expires, if that's something you want. But I wouldn't do more than 1 clerkship as a federal magistrate clerk. I don't think, it's not a career killer. Nothing's a career killer, by the way. Everything you learn, but it's how do you be more attractive to employers if that's what you're trying to do. And if that's what you're trying to do, I would recommend probably no more than 1, unless you want to be a career clerk, which is actually a good job. Okay, let's see here. Oh, wow, this is a good question. Thank you, whoever asked this. I love when people ask long questions. It's very helpful. Let's see. Okay, I'm a mid-level associate at an law and hard law firm in Dallas. I work in a practice group where it is in theory difficult to build a book of business without government legal experience. Unlike a lot of people in big law, I actually love my job. And that's true. A lot of people doing white-collar work really do like their jobs. I work long hours to manage my time. I don't mind being busy. I'm not expected to be on call all the time, and I don't have to bill the kinds of hours I want made at a Cravath firm. My professional feedback has been very positive. In part, partners like Seth and McKay, so if I'm nervous, I'm able to book a business I will eventually be forced out to a new law firm. I'm okay being of counsel. Okay, so so that's great. So if you have a goal of being a partner in one of these firms, there's a couple things you can do. The first thing is most people go to work in the U.S. Attorney's Office at some point, even just for a couple of years. I would apply to a bunch of U.S. attorney law firms, U.S. attorney positions all over the country, and you'll probably get one if you're really good at doing that right now. So that's the first thing I would do, because once you become a U.S. attorney, it becomes much easier to get in. But the other thing is, how do you attract clients? So you're only looking at one aspect of how do you bring a client. If you do work on whatever the types of white collar cases that you work on, after you work on them, you can write articles about different things. Like, how does someone respond? What happens if someone's accused of this type of thing, a white collar thing? How do you handle that? How does someone do this if they have that happen? And so just becoming an expert in writing about things related to your practice area that are relevant to things you work on could be very helpful. The way to look at getting business too, this is for everybody on the call. It's actually quite important. One of the ways to look at business is just pretend, and you can always start your personal blog or anything, or pretend you are a client looking for someone. So I was yesterday, just happened to be looking for a certain type of attorney to help me, and I was something, and it was just something about a contract expert, or someone that was an expert in a certain type of contract. And I did a search, and I only could find a few people out there that did it. And the way I found them typically is because those persons wrote articles. Those people wrote articles. So I hope that makes sense. Articles about my issue. So that's how I found them. And I found them because they wrote articles. Sometimes I found people based on being quoted in a news article, all that sort of thing. So you can bring it more business than even the partners in your firm, even without going to the U.S. Attorney's Office. But you need to be seen by people when they're searching for someone like you. And you need to build up your resume with all that sort of information. And that's really it. Once you do that and you're seen as an expert, then you're in good shape. That's what I would recommend. I don't think you really much to be that worried about with this particular question, but I think anybody that wants to build a book of business, it's not difficult or impossible. You just need to be seen. And you don't necessarily need the government experience. You need to have, but I think if you want to do white collar and that's really what you want to do as your career, I do think you're going to need actual trial experience. And I would recommend spending at least a few years as a U.S. attorney. I just think it'd be crazy not to. Okay, let's see here. What is good advice for M&A lawyers looking to move into private equity? I think you want to, if that's what you want to do, it's a corporate related type of position. I think you need to get experience doing that, and you can either do it in your own firm or do it somewhere else. That is a pretty different type of transition. So I don't know how difficult it's going to be for you to do that, but I do think that's definitely something that you could do. So definitely, let me see. There's another question. But my advice would be basically is if you're an M&A lawyer and you want to do that, the thing about working in large law firms is that if you're working in a large law firm, they're probably going to put you in just doing M&A or just private equity. So my advice would be if you're in a large law firm doing one thing, to try to transition and get exposed to that in that law firm if they will let you. If they don't, go to a smaller law firm where you can do both. That's how I would handle that. Because in the smaller law firm, you may be able to do both M&A and private equity, whereas in a larger law firm, it's going to be more difficult. Okay, is a lawyer licensed in a state allowed to work for a non-law office corporation in another state processing a legal job? I have no idea. I'm sorry. I can't answer that question. If you're working in a law, I don't know. I apologize. Sorry about that. Let me see. Okay, I think these are all the questions today. I appreciate everyone's questions, and this was a great group of questions today, and I will talk to everyone next week. And I am going to keep this open just to make sure the chat, let me just see here if there's anything. Actually, some people did in the chat, so I'm going to leave this open for a few minutes so someone can come in here, do all this and see. Okay. Great. And yeah, I think that's it. So I'm going to copy all these questions and then I'll send someone to do that, and then all the emails and stuff, and then I'll send everyone that's asked for that a copy of the presentation. So thank you.